They have told you that you have only one life. They have repeated to you since you were a child, that in the end there are only two doors, one toward eternal light, another toward perpetual darkness. They have taught you that your soul is born when your body is born, and that upon dying, everything is decided forever. That's what they told you in churches, in schools, in the sacred books you read with devotion, and you believed it, as everyone believed it, because that was what had to be believed. But today, here, in this instant where your breath meets these words, something begins to awaken in you. It is not new knowledge. It is ancient memory. You are not learning. You are remembering. Because there was a time when the teachings were different. There was a time when the Master from Galilee, the one who walked barefoot among the olive trees, and spoke of a kingdom not of this world, said things that were later erased, rewritten, hidden beneath layers of counsels and decrees. There was a time when his words contained a truth so vast, so liberating, that it threatened the very foundations of the power that would come after. And those words spoke of return, of the cycle, of the eternal wheel of the soul that comes and goes, that learns and forgets, that falls and rises again and again, until it finally awakens. This is not a theory. It is not a modern invention nor a spiritual fad. It is something that was there, in the first texts, in the nocturnal conversations, in the parables that not everyone could understand. And then in the year 553, at a council convened by Emperor Justinian in Constantinople, something changed forever. Men gathered in stone rooms, dressed in robes of authority, decided what was truth and what was heresy. They decided what you could know, and what you should forget. And among the doctrines they condemned, among the ideas they declared anathema, was the teaching of the pre-existence of the soul, the idea that you existed before being born, the idea that you will return after dying, the idea of return. Why did they do it? Think about it. Think about the power that fear has. If you believe you only have one life, one opportunity, one single attempt before final judgment, then control becomes absolute. Fear becomes your jailer. The church becomes the only door to salvation. But if you knew that your soul is eternal, that it has walked 1,000 paths before this one, that it will walk 1,000 paths after, then fear loses its power. Then you understand there is no rush, that there is no eternal condemnation, that each fall is part of learning, that each life is a step on the infinite stairway toward the light, and that was too dangerous for those building empires upon guilt. Breathe now, just breathe. Feel how air enters through your nose, fills your lungs, and slowly exits through your mouth. This breath you breathe now, you have breathed 1,000 times before, in other bodies, in other eras, in other names you no longer remember, because the memory of flesh is fragile, but the memory of the soul is eternal. Jesus knew it. When he walked beside the Sea of Galilee, when he healed the sick, when he spoke in parables that only the prepared could decipher, he knew that his disciples were not new souls. He knew that some of them had walked with him before, in other lives, in other times. And when they asked him about the man born blind, when they said to him, "Master, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" the question itself revealed something profound, because if they asked whether he had sinned before being born, then they accepted that he had existed before being born. And Jesus did not correct the premise. He did not tell them how could he have sinned before being born. No, he responded with something deeper, something that went beyond the logic of punishment. Neither this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. He was not denying pre-existence. He was teaching that suffering is not always punishment, that sometimes it is opportunity, that sometimes the soul chooses certain experiences, certain limitations, to learn what it needs to learn. And when he spoke of John the Baptist, when his disciples asked him if he was Elijah who was to come, Jesus did not deny it. On the contrary, he told them clearly, "And if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who was to come." He did not say he was like Elijah. He did not say he had the spirit of Elijah. He said he was Elijah, the prophet who had lived centuries before, who had ascended in a chariot of fire, had returned in a new body, with a new mission, to prepare the way for the Master. This is not interpretation, this is what is written. But afterward came the commentators, the theologians, the guardians of doctrine, and they said no, what he meant was something else. What he meant was symbolic, and thus word by word, truth by truth, they rewrote the message until only the shell remained, the form without the content, religion without mystery. But you are not just form, you are mystery. You are the living content of something that has existed since before time, and in the deepest part of you, where words do not reach, where dogmas cannot enter, you know it. You have always known it. That's why sometimes you look at someone and feel you already knew them. That's why sometimes you arrive at a place and feel you were already there. That's why sometimes you live something and know, without knowing how, that you already lived it before. It is not déjà vu, it is memory. It is your soul recognizing the traces of its own steps. The first Christians knew it. The Gnostics, the Essenes, the followers of the way that was not yet called Christianity, they spoke openly of the return of the soul. They spoke of the wheel of samsara, of the cycle of births and deaths, of the need to awaken to exit the cycle. And Jesus did not come to contradict that teaching. He came to complete it. He came to show that love is the way out, that compassion is the key that breaks the chains, that forgiveness is the fire that consumes karma. Because that is what karma really means. It is not divine punishment. It is not cosmic vengeance. It is simply the law of cause and effect applied to the soul. Each action generates a consequence. Each word leaves a mark. Each thought plants a seed, and those seeds grow, sometimes in this life, sometimes in the next, until we finally learn to plant only flowers. Jesus taught this when he said, "With the measure you use, it will be measured to you." When he said, "Judge not, that you be not judged." When he said, "Forgive 70 times 7, because he knew that the soul that judges will return to be judged. The soul that hurts will return to be hurt, not as punishment, but as learning. Not because God is cruel, but because God is teacher. And the best teacher is experience itself. That's why we are born again and again, not because we are bad, not because we have failed, but because we are learning. Because the soul is an eternal student of the school of existence, and each life is a class, each encounter is a lesson, each pain is an opportunity to grow, each joy is a reminder of what we really are, and what we really are is light, divine spark, fragment of God himself, playing the game of forgetting in order to remember himself. Because if you always knew you were divine, how could you experience the miracle of discovering it? Close your eyes now, just for a moment. Close your eyes and feel your body, feel your hands, feel your heart beating in your chest. This body is yours, but you are not it. This body is a vehicle, a tool, a temporary suit, that your soul has chosen to wear on this journey. When this life ends, when this body returns to the dust from which it came, you will continue, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as living consciousness, awake, ready for the next step. And that next step may be another body, another family, another era. Because the soul knows no borders or calendars. The soul is an eternal traveler of time and space, always moving toward the light, even though sometimes the path passes through darkness. But darkness is not the enemy. Darkness is the teacher. Each fear you face, each shadow you traverse, each dark night of the soul, is an initiation. It is the soul telling you, here is something you need to see, here is something you need to heal, here is something you need to release. And when you release it, when you finally let go of resentment, fear, guilt, pride, then the weight disappears, then the soul becomes lighter, then the wheel turns with less friction, and life after life, incarnation after incarnation, you release more and more, until one day there is nothing left to release. And that day, that sacred day, you no longer need to return. That day you are free. That is what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven. Not a place, but a state. Not up there, but in here. A state of consciousness, where there is no longer separation, where there is no longer fear, where there is no longer need to be born again, because you have completed the learning. You have remembered who you are, you have returned home, and that return is not outward, it is inward. It is the return to yourself, to your true self, to the self that existed before your first birth, and that will exist after your last death, to the eternal, immutable, indestructible self, that is only playing at being human for a while. The text they did not want you to read say it clearly. In the Gospel of Thomas, found in the sands of Egypt in 1945, after centuries buried, Jesus says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." He is talking about that, about the divine spark, about the inner light, about the truth you carry within and have forgotten. And in that same gospel, when they ask him, "When will the kingdom come?" he responds, It will not come by waiting for it. It will not be said, here it is or there it is. Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it. Because the kingdom is not future, it is present. It is not external, it is internal. It is not reward, it is recognition. But those texts were declared heretical. They were burned, prohibited, buried, because they contained truths that were inconvenient to power, truths that made the mediation of priests unnecessary, truths that put power back in your hands, in your heart, in your soul. And the greatest of those truths is this: you do not need to be saved. You are already saved. You always have been. You have only forgotten. And life, with all its cycles, with all its returns, with all its incarnations, is simply the process of remembering. You are not falling, you are ascending. You are not lost, you are on the way. You are not broken, you are being polished, like a rough diamond, that needs many blows, many pressures, many transformations, until it finally shines with its own light. And each life is a blow, each experience is a pressure, each pain is a transformation. But in the end, at the end of all cycles, when you look back and see the complete path, you will understand that each step was necessary, that each fall taught you to rise, that each darkness prepared you for the light, that each death led you toward a more conscious rebirth, because that is what being reborn really means. It is not just changing bodies, it is changing consciousness. It is being born into a new understanding. It is awakening to a new dimension of yourself, and you can do it now. You do not need to wait to die. You do not need to wait for the next life. You can be reborn in this very instant, here, now, in this precise moment where your heart beats and your lungs breathe and your soul listens. Breathe deeply now, deeper than before. Inhale as if you were breathing for the first time. Fill your lungs with new air, new life, new possibility. And as you exhale, release. Release everything they told you that you were. Release all the limitations you accepted. Release all the fears you inherited. Let them go with the breath. Let them go with the exhalation. Because they are not yours. They never were yours. Inhale again, and feel how the air enters not only your lungs, but every cell of your body. Feel how life itself fills you, sustains you, animates you. This is the same life that has animated all the bodies you have had. The same life that will animate all the bodies you will have. Because life is not yours, you are life. Exhale slowly, and feel how as you release the air, you also release the weight of guilt that is not yours, the weight of original sin that never existed, the weight of eternal condemnation that was invented to control you. Release it all, because you are free. You have always been free, and in this freedom, in this open space that is created when you release, something begins to emerge, a sensation, an intuition, a deep knowing that does not come from books or words, but from the very depth of your being. It is the feeling that this is truth, not because someone told you so, not because it is written in some sacred text, but because it resonates, because something within you recognizes its own truth. That resonance is your compass. It is the voice of your soul. It is the whisper of your eternal being, reminding you who you really are. And when you learn to listen to that voice, when you learn to trust that resonance, then you no longer need intermediaries. You no longer need anyone to tell you what to believe or how to live, because you have your own direct connection with the Source, with God, with the All, with whatever you call that infinite presence that sustains all existence. Jesus taught that direct connection. That's why he prayed on the mountain, alone, in silence, in intimate communion with the Father. And when they asked him how to pray, he did not give complex formulas or elaborate rituals. He told them, Our Father, not the Father of some, the Father of all, not the distant God, the close God, the God who is in you as you, through you, and that God does not punish, that God does not condemn, that God does not keep accounts of your mistakes to charge you later, that God is pure, unconditional, eternal love, and love does not punish. Love teaches, love waits, love knows that in the end, we all return, because there is nowhere else to go. There is only the eternal return home. The parable of the prodigal son is the story of reincarnation. The son who leaves, who wastes his inheritance, who falls into misery, who finally decides to return, and the father, who does not judge him, who does not punish him, who simply receives him with open arms, and celebrates his return. That is your story. That is the story of every soul. We leave, we forget, we fall, we suffer, and then tired of wandering, we decide to return. And when we return, when we finally turn inward, and walk toward home, we discover that we were never outside, that the Father was always here, that home was always here, that we were always here, just with our eyes closed. Open your eyes now. If you had them closed, open them, but do not look outside, look inside, because what you are seeking is not in the external world, what you are seeking is in the internal world, in the silent space behind your thoughts, in the deep stillness beneath your emotions, in the constant presence that observes everything but never changes. That presence is you, not the you that has a name and profession and nationality, the eternal you, the you that has been many names, many professions, many nationalities, the you that will continue to be after this body becomes dust, the you that is immortal, indestructible, infinite, and that you does not need to be saved, because it was never lost. It was only experiencing the sensation of being lost. It was only playing the game of forgetting. It was only exploring the depths of separation to be able to appreciate the height of union, because you cannot know light without darkness, you cannot know love without fear, you cannot know unity without separation. That's why we descend, that's why we incarnate again and again, not as punishment, but as exploration, as adventure, as the sacred game of consciousness discovering itself. And when you finally understand it, when you finally see that everything, absolutely everything, every pain and every joy, every meeting and every farewell, every birth and every death, has been part of your own design, part of your own plan, part of your own path home, then resentment disappears, guilt disappears, fear disappears, and all that remains is gratitude. Gratitude for each experience, gratitude for each lesson, gratitude for each life you have lived, and each life you will live, because they are all steps on the same stairway, they are all chapters in the same book, they are all notes in the same symphony, and that symphony is your song, the song of your soul, the unique melody that only you can sing, and you have been singing it for eons, sometimes loudly, sometimes in a whisper, sometimes in silence, but always singing, always expressing, always being. Now in this moment, as you read these words, your song is sounding. You can hear it if you pay attention, not with your ears, with your heart. It is the rhythm of your breathing. It is the beating of your heart. It is the flowing of your blood. It is the vibration of every cell. It is the song of life itself moving through you. And that song does not end when this body ends. That song continues, in another body, in another form, in another dimension, because the music of existence is eternal, and you are one of its irreplaceable notes. The church did not want you to know this, not because they were evil, but because they were afraid. Afraid of losing control, afraid of losing authority, afraid that if people discovered their own power, their own divinity, their own direct connection with God, then they would no longer need institutions or intermediaries. And they were right, you do not need them, you have never needed them. The temple is within you, the altar is in your heart, the priest is your own consciousness, and the sacrament is every conscious breath, every present moment, every act of love. Jesus said it, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. And he spoke of his body, he spoke of resurrection, but he also spoke of something deeper. He spoke of the fact that the true temple is not a building, it is the body, it is consciousness, it is the place where spirit dwells, and that temple can be destroyed 1,000 times, and it will rise 1,000 times, because spirit is indestructible. Each reincarnation is a resurrection, each new birth is a rising again. It is not the same body, but it is the same soul, the same spark, the same light, only in a new vessel, with new opportunities, with new lessons, and those lessons are not random, your soul chooses them. Before being born, before entering this body, before forgetting who you are, your soul looked at the path ahead and said, yes, this is what I need, these are the challenges that will make me grow, these are the people I need to meet, this is the pain that will polish me, this is the joy that will remind me of my true nature. And you chose this life, you chose your parents, you chose your circumstances, not because you are a masochist, but because you are a student, because the soul knows that growth comes from challenge, not from comfort, because the diamond forms under pressure, not in softness. This does not mean you should accept abuse or remain in toxic situations. It means you can see those situations as teachers, learn what they have to teach you, and then move forward. It means nothing is wasted, that everything has purpose, that every experience, however painful, is part of your evolution. And when you understand this, when you really understand it, not just with your mind but with your heart, then forgiveness becomes natural, because there is no one to blame. Everyone is playing the role they agreed to play. Everyone is serving the growth of everyone. Even those who hurt you, especially those who hurt you, were your greatest teachers, because they taught you compassion through pain. They taught you strength through adversity. They taught you love through lack of love. And from that place of observation, from that space of pure consciousness, you can see all your life differently. You can see that nothing that has happened was a mistake, that everything was perfect, that each pain had its purpose, that each joy had its message, that each person you met was a teacher, that each experience you lived was an initiation, and not just this life, all your lives, all the ones you remember, and all the ones you forgot, all were perfect, all were necessary, all were part of your soul's grand plan to awaken, because that is the only real objective, to awaken, not to go to heaven, not to avoid hell, not to win rewards, not to avoid punishments, only to awaken, only to remember, only to return to full consciousness of who you are. And when you awaken, you understand that heaven and hell are not places, they are states of consciousness. Hell is the state of separation, of forgetting, of fear. Heaven is the state of union, of remembering, of love, and you can experience both in the same life, on the same day, in the same moment, depending on where your consciousness is. That's why Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, not in the future, now, not up there here, not outside of you, within you. You only need to open your eyes, you only need to awaken, you only need to remember. And the way to remember is simple, though not always easy. It is to live consciously, it is to be present, it is to breathe with intention, it is to observe your thoughts, without identifying with them, it is to feel your emotions without being dragged by them, it is to love without conditions, it is to forgive without exceptions, it is to serve without expecting reward. When you live like this, when you live from the soul, and not from the ego, then every act becomes sacred, then every moment becomes meditation, then every encounter becomes communion, and little by little, life after life, moment after moment, the veil thins, the illusion weakens, forgetting retreats, and remembering advances, until one day, in one life, in one perfect moment, the veil falls completely, and you see everything. You see all your lives, you see all your names, you see all your faces, you see how everything was connected, you see how everything made sense. You see how you were never lost, you were only playing at being lost. And in that seeing, in that total recognition, there is laughter, deep, joyful, liberating laughter, because you understand the cosmic joke. You understand that you were searching for lives for what you always had. You understand that you were trying to arrive where you already were. You understand that you were trying to become what you always were. And that understanding is enlightenment. It is liberation. It is salvation. Not because someone else saves you, but because you save yourself from the only enemy you ever had, ignorance of your own divine nature. Jesus knew it. That's why he did not call himself the Savior. He called truth the Savior. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.